How are we doing?
All right. Thanks. Been enjoying the sunshine. How about you?
It's been quite warm, hasn't it?
Yes. Finally summer.
Yeah, that's climate change for you.
Yes. True.
Bring it back on topic straight away.
Yes. Oh, straight in. I love it. I know people spent all of winter and spring saying, "Oh yeah, so much for global warming," and then all of a sudden it's warm here, and it's like 45 degrees in Spain and Portugal and 50 degrees in India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
There's your global warming.
Yeah. But wasn't it lovely to get some vitamin D?
I do enjoy that, to be honest with you. I do like sitting in the sun.
Yeah, I don't.
Don't you?
No, I'm not a fan of the sun.
Oh no, you're a cold person, aren't you?
Cold-hearted. Horrible. So how have you been?
Okay. Haven't had anything. I haven't had anything happen this week, basically, because of the rail strike. I've been working from home.
Oh, okay.
So I've barely left the house. I've been doing. I've got up a few mornings. I've been for a run one day, and then a couple of mornings I did some yoga with Adrian on YouTube.
Right.
Which was very good for the body and soul.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that very much. I think yoga with Adrian is probably the only way I would ever do yoga. I can't see me going to a class because I think I'd be too self-conscious.
Yeah.
And I'd constantly be thinking, I'm doing it wrong, and they know I'm doing it wrong.
I went to a class. Well, I did my Pilates when my back went. That was good. That was fine. And I just went because I needed to. I had to do something. And then me and Michelle went to a yoga class down in the local gym near the cricket club, and it was full of old people. So I was like, I don't care.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, they could. Once they were on their knees, they basically couldn't get up again. So I was like, fine. It's fine. It's all good.
Yeah, I think if I went back to shift work, midweek yoga class would be the only way I'd do it. I wouldn't want to do it like in the evening on a weekend when there's all young people and bendy people, because I'm not really bendy. So when you're doing it on with yoga with Adrian on YouTube in your front room with a yoga mat, no one knows how badly you're doing it, do they?
No, that's right. Yeah, I looked at some yoga poses for my back. I mean, I knew some of them anyway, but then there was this thing about I just looked at it to help with my mental health stuff as well. And I looked at these pictures. I was like, that's never going to happen. I mean, I do the very, very basic pose, but I'm like, to get to the picture that was on the internet, I'm like, no. It was like a lunge, it was like a full lunge, but then your foot coming up from your back and then holding onto your foot over your head. That's like, nah, that's never happened.
No, I did one that she said, "Oh, if you keep doing this, you'll be able to. It'll be good doing a headstand."
Okay.
Like, nah, I'm at least 20 years past headstands.
Yeah, and you'd slip as well, wouldn't you? Try to do
yeah, that's it. I haven't got any hair for friction, have I? I'd just slip off. Probably end up breaking my neck. If you want to get involved, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for How I Vegan Podcast.
And if you wanted to get in touch, all you've got to do is email us at howiveganpodcast@gmail.com. Our guest is in the waiting room.
Oh, lovely.
Shall I admit her?
Why not? Thank you so much for joining us. It's very exciting, and I was really keen to get you on. I'll come on to the proper intro in a minute, but you were the person who got me onto Happy Cow, and I think it must have been 4 years ago. I hadn't been vegan long, and my wife and I were going to Bruges for our wedding anniversary, And so I just typed in Bruges vegan on Instagram, and you came up, and I said, Trudi, where should we go to eat? And you came back with a list of like 4 or 5 places, and I think we went to 3 of them, and they were all absolutely fantastic.
That's good to hear. Then you discovered Happy Cow as well, or did I mention Happy Cow? Or
yes, and off we went, and then I've been using it religiously ever since, because of obviously it's like a vegan where to go guide, isn't it? Really, it's absolutely fantastic. Our guest is Trudi, and Trudi is an animal rights and vegan activist who lives in Bruges in Belgium, our first international guest. She's the editor of 2 books on veganism and animal rights. Went vegan in the vegetarian in the late 90s and vegan in 2010. And you may have seen posts about her food experiences on Instagram at Trudi_Bruges Vegan, and on her blog, The Bruges Vegan. So welcome, Trudi.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have an international guest, because so far, most of our guests have been either related to us or friends, and so we've very recently started branching out into people in social media. And as I mentioned before, you've got quite the following on Instagram and on your blog as well. Mm-hmm. And so tell me about the blog. How did that come about?
Well, the blog is called the Bruges Vegan, and I started it nearly 10 years ago, so 2013. So at that time, I was vegan for about 3 years, 4 years. And there were hardly any restaurants in Bruges at that time that offered vegan options. So a lot has changed in the last 10 years. So I really wanted to document the restaurants that offered sometimes vegetarian options, but where you could ask to veganize it. And I also started contacting a lot of restaurants, emailing them, telephoning them, and really asking them, hey, veganism, do you know about it? Can you provide a vegan menu for us? And so in that way, some restaurants have started offering vegan options, because when you ask it, sometimes they will provide it, they will think about it. And so I started documenting. I put reviews, a lot of reviews, restaurant reviews on my blog. And I also made a very thorough list. Then it eventually became very thorough, very bigger and bigger, with all the restaurants that offer vegan options in Bruges and in the area, and Flanders in Belgium. And also where you can get a vegan menu on request. Sometimes they don't have vegan options on the menu, but you can ask it. So that's why I started the blog, to document, to guide people to the restaurants, but also to ask those restaurants and to make them aware that there is a big demand for veganism, for vegan options at restaurants.
Wow. So you're an ambassador for Happy Cow, aren't you?
Yeah, I also post a lot of restaurant reviews and photos on Happy Cow. So you could say, it's a bit the same. But on my blog is maybe perhaps more accessible for people who are really not that familiar with veganism, but they search online, they search on Google, and they stumble upon my restaurant reviews. And that's more accessible than already going to Happy Cow, because that's more already a website and an app for people who are more familiar with veganism, who will install the app if you're already vegan or vegan curious. And my blog is also more accessible for family and friends. I can more easily point them to my blog than to Happy Cow. Although, I'm also an ambassador for Happy Cow. I've been that for about a couple of years now. I have like 450 reviews on Happy Cow, I think, and
wow,
thousands of photos on Happy Cow. And I think it's a great app and website. It's been exists for more than 20 years, I think, since 1999. So I was using it from already in the beginning, in the old days when you didn't have a mobile phone. And I remember printing lists with restaurants, and on the airplane, putting them on the map, where this restaurant is over there and this restaurant is over there. So that was totally different now with the mobile phone. Now everything is much more easier.
Wow, that's incredible.
450, and I know you don't that's not just within Bruges, like you say, that's across Belgium. I saw that you posted some from Antwerp
Yeah.
in the last few days as well.
Yeah, not only from Belgium, but every time we do a city trip or a holiday, I will always make sure from the restaurants that we visit, if they are not on Happy Cow, I will certainly add them to Happy Cow. And if they are, I will put my photos and my review. And sometimes other vegans will say, well, yeah, Happy Cow, yes, I know it, but it's not really, it's not complete and not all the restaurants are on it. And well, then I always say, but yeah, you can add the restaurants to it. It depends totally on user input. So it's important for everybody who's using the app to also be a contributor to it. If there are some restaurants that are not on Happy Cow and you feel they should be on Happy Cow, go ahead and add them.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize you could add them yourself.
It depends totally on user input.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yes, I've seen somewhere you can see where it's been added, and then since then, they've changed their opening hours or they've changed the menu, and people sort of update it as time goes on. It's
because
fantastic.
they cannot have a crew or a staff that looks after all these thousands of listings worldwide. It depends on people using the app to keep it up to date, to if a listing has closed or if the opening hours have changed, to put in an update and say, hey, look, the opening hours have changed. And that's how we keep it up to date. And I'm an ambassador for it. And because I think it's, I don't make money from Happy Cow, I'm just a volunteer. I'm an ambassador. It's just a volunteer function. But it's an app that I think that's really, really useful for the vegan community and also for people who are vegan curious, who to make life easier as a vegan.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So within Bruges, then you mentioned that when you first started off, there wasn't really much of a vegan scene, shall we say. Certainly, I went there 4 years ago, and we were very pleasantly surprised at the number of options that there were for. It's a city, but it's not a big city, I would say, but certainly within the city centre, there were plenty of options back then. So, is it somewhere within Belgium that's seen as like a sort of hive of vegan activity, or is it something that's come about as a result of like your actions and people who have been asking for vegan options in restaurants?
Well, I would like to think that I've had something to do with it, and maybe a tiny little bit. Yeah, I know that a couple of restaurants have been persuaded to put vegan options on the menu because I kept asking them and emailing them. But Bruges is a very touristy city, and it's not really seen as a vegan hub in Belgium. I would say that that goes to Ghent or maybe Antwerpen. Also, Brussels is picking up, but has been behind. And when you compare it to other cities like Berlin, and so Brussels has been behind, but now it's picking up. And then you also have Louvain, where you have a lot of vegan options, vegan restaurants. Bruges is not in the top 3, I would say, no, but okay. It's improving. It's improving.
Tell us about your vegan story then. I mentioned in the intro that you went vegetarian in the 90s. What's the backstory?
Yeah, well, in those days, vegetarianism was like already a big thing. I don't think I ever met another vegan in the 90s, or not that I was actually aware of. Or when you were an animal rights activist, vegetarianism was what was promoted by animal rights organizations. If in those days they would have promoted veganism, I would have probably become a vegan at that time. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm very strongly in favor of straightforward vegan campaigns, vegan activism, and not the saying, oh, you have to become vegetarian first and the little steps to become vegan. No, that is the case for a lot of the older generation vegans. I could say I could call myself that. We were vegetarian first and then vegan later, but because there was so little or practically no vegan activism or vegan campaigns in those days. So I would like to think if the animal rights organizations had put more stressor on veganism, I would have become vegan much earlier. So yeah, I went vegetarian in the second half of the 90s, and it was a combination of seeing a lot of footage on TV, and it was the period also of the live transports and a lot of protests against it between the UK and the continent. Also ships that arrived in Belgium, and a lot of footage of that on TV. And we had foot and mouth disease. We had a lot of crisis in agriculture, the foot and mouth disease. I don't know if you guys remember those days, but I'm probably a little bit older than you are.
Yeah,
And we had also, yeah,
and mad cow disease as well.
Mad cow disease as well. And so all those crises. And as a coincidence, I picked up a second-hand copy of the book Animal Liberation by Peter Singer. It was translated in Dutch, and I had already participated in some activism against the use of animals in experimentation. And then I started reading Animal Liberation and also ecofeminist books like the work from Carol Adams and such. And yeah, that started the whole thing. And I became vegetarian then. And then I thought, yeah, I'm vegetarian now, I'm doing enough. But yeah, I was wrong. I was wrong. And it's only many years later when veganism became more known. And yeah, I did research after graduating. I did research in criminology. I worked at university, and I did my doctoral research on anthropocentrism and speciesism in criminology. So that was around the year 2000. And then after university, I worked in social youth care, and then as a policy advisor for the Flemish government. And although I had left academia for many years, but I was the first in 2009, the first big international conference of human animal studies, a critical animal studies. And I saw the announcement of that conference, and I thought, oh, these were all the people that I had read books from and that I had used in my research. And I said, oh, I want to go to this conference just to see them, to participate. And it was in Australia. So my husband and me, we went to Australia to do the conference and also did a holiday. And there at the conference we were, and that was the first time I was in an environment with 200, 300 people. I think nearly everybody was vegan there. And it was the first time. And it was like, wow, they were even angry. I heard comments that the food at the conference was not vegan, but it was merely vegetarian. And was like really an eye-opener for me. And at that conference was also Carol Adams was there, and she's like my I won't say hero, but a real big inspiration for me. She's always been I've read so many of her books, and I wanted to take the opportunity to go talk to her. And I said, hi, I'm Trudi from Belgium, and I'm so inspired by you, and you helped me for my doctoral research and everything. And then she just asked me, and are you vegan? And I said, no, I'm vegetarian. And that was, yeah, okay, there it kind of clicked over there. It's really ironic that it had to be at the other side of the world. Because, yeah, by that time, there was also vegan activism in Belgium, but vegan activism at that time in Belgium was more like, oh, not say the word vegan too much because that can scare people away. Let's use the word veggie instead. And, the Thursday Veggie Day campaigns, and not really straight out vegan activism. But so at that conference, it was all, I was surrounded by other vegan activists, animal rights activists, and that's where it clicked. And so, afterwards we came home, and then gradually in that year, I can't say that it was from one day to the next, but in the course of a couple of months, then my husband and me, we went vegan together. We also went vegetarian together in the 90s. And then in 2009, 2010, we went vegan together.
Brilliant.
So that's, my vegan journey.
What's been the biggest struggle during all that time? You said quite a few bits there, but what do you think has been the biggest problem?
For being vegan, you mean?
Yeah.
For as a vegan, well, I would say that certainly in the beginning, you're not really sure yet, and you don't want to make too much of a fuss. But those were in the beginning years. I'm much more confident now, and I'm vegan is who I am and what I am, and I very strongly believe in it. But it can still be hard in social at certain social occasions, you know, work parties or family gatherings, and especially like, for example, when you are invited to a wedding from some of your friends or family, and then you have to deal with the caterer, but you are not the one who is paying for the caterer, so you already have to be careful with not treading on any toes, and those circumstances are yeah, can be difficult. So social things, but I would say that that's just a practical side, you know, that's you can overcome that. I've had occasions that I always have backup, you know, like energy bars, and you can overcome an evening with just some bread and fruit, and all that's not really a problem. But psychologically, I think it's sometimes more difficult when you realize how much animal use and abuse there is in the world, and that can be hard as a vegan. I think that that's even more hard. That's harder than the practical side. All the practical issues can be overcome. You know, we live in a very privileged side of the world, where most of us can afford to buy food, and you know, we have access to food. So those practical issues can be overcome by most people here, but the psychological side can be very difficult.
That social thing's quite tricky, isn't it, as well? Like say, if you're at a wedding and stuff, you can overcome the access to food, but it's the people that are around you as well.
Yeah.
Judgments and things can be really tough, can't they?
Yeah, and always having to answer the same bingo questions, you know. Yeah, always being then when they come with the food, and where's the vegan at the table? We've once had like a family gathering, and they came with the non-vegan dishes for the other people, and then very loud, like the whole room could hear it, and where are the vegans, and all the rest is eating normal. Like, yeah, those are the abnormal ones. Yeah, that's yeah, some situations can be difficult, but yeah, after all those years now, we've learned to deal with them, and we know the stereotypical questions, and we know how to answer them. You know, like the same questions you get over and over again, and so what do you eat, but it's natural to eat animals, and yeah, things like that. We get used to that, to answering that.
Yeah, the first couple of times it's quite awkward, isn't it? Because you feel a bit like, oh, but then the next time I know how to answer this because I've been asked it before. There's only about 5 questions, aren't there, that you get asked, maybe in slightly different ways. But
yeah, not like the what would you do if you end up on an island? Yeah,
with a pig.
Bingo, yeah. So things like that, yeah. But the natural thing, and after a while, after all these years, you get really, you have your story, you know the arguments, you know that cow's milk isn't natural. You have you tell people about calves being taken away from the cows, and that mother's milk, that it's actually mother's milk, and it's amazing how many people don't even realize that the cows don't just produce milk, that they have to have a baby first, a calf first, before they give milk. We also have a lot of adopted animals at home. My husband and me, we take care of adopted animals, and we also used to have sheep. Not anymore. They died of old age, and you can't imagine how many people, non-vegans, that came to visit us, and that they saw the sheep, and then they ask, oh, and do they give milk? Do you make cheese from the milk? I say, but they don't just give milk. They don't have babies, so they don't give milk. And yeah, that's really amazing that people have been so brainwashed, indoctrinated into believing that we as humans should drink the milk of another species.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up like that, thinking that cows are just there and they just have milk.
They give milk.
You don't see the big process of it. It's like, and then you get the realization, it blows your mind.
Okay, so what did your friends and family think about it then when you went vegan?
Yeah,
Well, you and
well,
your husband, I suppose.
yeah, they were already sort of used to it because we were vegetarian for so long before it. And although it was a bigger step, because on family gatherings and all, they would give us cheese, and always cheese, you know. The vegetarians are cheese. So when we then eventually said, well, no cheese anymore, that was really, so what can we give them now? So that was a bit tricky, but in the beginning, and now still sometimes, we bring our own food, and gradually, you know, veganism has grown so much. And I even have, like my sister-in-law and other family members that start asking for recipes, and their children also being vegan curious and looking for recipes. So yeah, it is growing. It is changing. I wouldn't say they're not negative. They're slightly positive. Although it's a pity that none of my friends that I've met as being non-vegan have turned vegan meanwhile. So I would like to see that more. We've only had one really negative experience from a family member, but I was a brother-in-law from my husband's side, and it was at our wedding. My husband and we were vegetarian then. We weren't vegan yet. So our wedding was vegetarian in the time, and there was one person who asked the chef to have a steak. He demanded to have a steak, and so the chef luckily said no, it's a vegetarian feast. Nowadays it would have been a vegan, of course, and that was the only time that we had such a negative reaction, because a couple of months later it was a party that they hosted, because one of their children did like a Catholic feast, a communion. Do you know that?
Yeah.
And then we had asked in advance to have a vegetarian meal. And when the waiters came with the food, we said, yeah, we asked for a vegetarian meal, and he didn't want to provide anything for us. So we didn't eat anything, nothing. And I drank way too much then. I used to drink alcohol then. I don't drink alcohol anymore. But then, I thought, well, if we don't get anything to eat, we'll just drink what we can. And that was the only occasion that it was really negative. Yeah.
Okay.
Fair play to your chef though for saying no, I'm not doing a steak. This is a vegetarian feast. That's brilliant.
Yes. So I'm just going to take this opportunity. I just realized that I didn't mention the places that you'd recommended when we were in Bruges, and I wanted to give them a shout out because they were so great. So the absolute pinnacle was #food, which was absolutely tremendous. And it was like nowhere we'd ever been before, and probably nowhere we've ever been since. It was, I don't know, how would you best describe it? It was like food, nothing was, I don't want to say normal, but it was like things you would never find in any other restaurant, I think.
Yeah, and they put a lot of effort into presentation as well. Yeah,
huge amount.
And that's a coincidence, because last evening we just had dinner from them, because they now also have vending machines on the outside of Bruges. Like it's only 10 kilometers away for us, so they have vending machines, and with a lot of vegan options and vegan desserts and everything. Yeah, and really good value for money. Yeah, it was
wow.
When we go to Belgium.
Yeah.
It was that's probably the most eco-friendly holiday I've had, because we went on the train. So we went the train from where we live to London, and then the Eurostar to Brussels, and then the train to Bruges. And #food, it was amazing, because it's like an art project. The food, when it comes on your plate, the dressing is designed, it's part of the design of the food, and it's all exquisitely laid out, and the chef came out to explain to us what it was, what was in it, how he'd made it, and it was just absolutely phenomenal.
And he now also makes desserts with optical illusions, like with food illusions. Like you think you have a sponge, like a sponge for cleaning on your plate, or you think it's an ashtray, and it's actually a cream with chocolate and everything. So food illusions, really great.
I've seen that on Instagram, and I thought, I don't know if I could do that, because it just looks like a load of cigarette butts, doesn't it?
The ashtray is creepy. Yeah.
That was good. And we went to one that I think is not there anymore, the waffle.
Yeah, the Bruges tafel.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. No.
That is a shame, because they were excellent waffles.
Yeah,
really
but we now have a breakfast, lunch, brunch place, all vegan, Blackbirds. So if you ever come to Bruges again, that's really a must go. Really good.
Okey-doke. We might have to do a podcast on tour, Wes, and we'll go to Bruges.
When we get some sort of funding, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. When we get sponsored.
Yeah, but now, it is very easy, you know, with the train. When we go to the UK or to London, we always take the train. It's so easy with the Eurostar. Yeah.
I mean, St Pancras to Brussels it's less than 2 hours. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's much better than flying. Obviously, environmentally, it's better than flying, but it's also quicker, because you have to check in 2 hours before you fly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's much more relaxed on the train as well, I think.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the future, I'm sure. And the other place that we went to was, I'm probably going to mangle the pronunciation of this, De Plat. Is it Plat?
Yeah, that's a vegetarian restaurant. Yeah, not really one of my favorites, but yeah.
Okay.
Personal preferences can differ.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it there? Yeah.
We did enjoy it. It's very small, and there's lots of little rooms, and it felt like we were in someone's front room.
Yes. Cozy.
That's how small it was. It was cozy is the word. Yes, but the food was nice, so it was good.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we were very impressed with Bruges. Anyway, back to the questions.
Obviously, you went from vegetarian to veganism. Is there anything that changed for you when you made that transition?
Well, yeah, I think there was a huge difference between being a vegetarian and then turning vegan, because vegetarian was mainly focused, for us at least, was mainly focused on just the food aspect, while being vegan, of course, as a vegetarian, I also try to look at products that were not tested on animals, but being vegan is much broader, is more in all aspects of your lifestyle, and in all aspects, and everything that you buy and everything that you do, veganism transpires. So yeah, that at that point that has changed a lot. But for me now, being vegan, how I've changed in those 12, 13 years, because there has been an evolution. I'm not the same vegan anymore like I was in the beginning. I feel much more at ease now being vegan, you know. In the beginning, I was more like also an outcast. The veganism wasn't so well known. I'm talking about 2009, 2010. So that was, it was much more difficult. For some people, it can still be difficult now, but you have so many options now, and so many products that are labeled vegan, and it's become so much easier, and I'm feeling so much comfortable with being vegan now. I wouldn't say I was afraid before to say to people that I'm vegan, but now when we're speaking to people that I've never met before, for example, and let's say they come around with cake and I say, no, thank you. And they will ask, oh, don't you want any cake? I have no problem anymore with saying, oh, no, I'm vegan, and explaining why. Whilst in the beginning, I found those social situations to be more difficult, but now I don't find them so difficult anymore. So yeah, it's been a journey, but I'm feeling much more at ease now. I'm much more confident. It is, although sometimes still awkward. It can be still awkward, like I said earlier, in social situations.
Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely get that with the cake thing, or for that sort of thing, and really having to try and hold your tongue and not going off on one about why
Yeah, but
why it's all
yeah,
wrong.
we don't. I feel like I never have to start with those things, because eventually people always ask. They always ask, and then question after question. So I'm not the so-called stereotypical annoying vegan that immediately wants to convert everybody to veganism, but inevitably they will ask questions about it. So why don't you eat, and why did you become vegan? And that's those are opportunities for activism as well. It all depends on how you bring the message then, of course. But every opportunity that you can talk about veganism is an opportunity to make people conscious about it, and give them information that they didn't know before. And so yeah, I'm feeling much more confident about those things now. I'm feeling good about doing that.
Yeah, I like to, like, if someone's going to have a conversation with me about why I'm vegan, I'm happy to have an educational conversation with them. If they're going to sit there and take the mick out of me while I'm trying to, or come up with point of targets, I'm like, I'm not going to bother. There's no point. But if you're going to engage with me and have a conversation, then I'm all for.
But not if they start ridiculing me. If they start laughing at me, then it's also okay. Let's end this.
So this is one of the key vegan questions. Then, sure, you've been asked this 100 times. Where do you get your protein?
Okay, yeah, that's a real bingo question, isn't it? You know, like only animal products have protein in them, of course. Yeah, no, yeah, there are plenty of plant-based products that also have protein, and I'm not going to give a nutritional education here, but if you just eat varied and balanced, you get your protein from peas and everything, and beans, and yeah, tofu is from beans. And so yeah, I just try to eat as balanced and as much variety as I can. And then protein isn't even an issue. It's not something that I really think about every day. I have to have my protein. If you just eat enough vegetables and fruits and grains and nuts and seeds, and you have everything that you need, then as for other things, the only thing that as vegans we have to be careful about is getting B12, the vitamin B12. So that it's important that you have fortified foods with B12, or that you take a supplement as B12. So that's actually the only thing that you have to be careful about. But if you eat varied and balanced, then there can't be really any issues, unless you have a gastrointestinal disorder or a disease or something that you cannot take in some nutrition. So that's possible. Like, for example, for B12, I've been having injections of B12 for nearly 30 years now. So that's from before I was vegetarian even, so it has nothing to do with being a vegetarian in the beginning or being vegan now. But my body just doesn't absorb B12. So I can take as much supplements orally as I want. I will not have B12 in my body. And that's because I have Crohn's disease. Maybe you've heard of that. It's a gastrointestinal, and I've had a surgery, and I've lost some of my bowel. So I cannot take in B12. So that has nothing to do with my veganism, but just with my disease.
What's the best thing about being vegan?
Well, trying all those nice new foods and discovering all new products, especially the last couple of years. When we go on a holiday, also on a city trip, it's now like our city trips are centered around looking up the restaurants and the vegan shops, and oh yeah, and accidentally there's a museum around the corner. Maybe we can go there, but yeah, it's discovering all those new platforms and initiatives. That's very nice, but yeah, that's merely practical. But actually, the nicest thing is realizing that you don't participate anymore in animal abuse. That you don't. When I live on the countryside, so I'm surrounded by fields of cows, and I hear sometimes pigs screaming in the distance, and sometimes you can hear them screaming when they come to take them from the farm to go to the
Well,
slaughterhouse.
that must be
That's
really hard.
Yeah, that's very hard. And sometimes even the bellowing of the cows that who have had their calves taken away from them. So that's really hard to hear. But the only thing that I can't intervene, you can't do anything about that at that moment. But what is sort of comforting for me then is to know that I'm not participating in that it's not because of me that is happening. So I'm not the cause of that anymore. So there's a famous quote by Franz Kafka, he was an Austrian, I think, an Austrian writer. You've certainly heard the quote before. Now I can look at you and in peace, I don't eat you anymore. And I have that feeling when sometimes we go cycling here in the countryside and we see the fields with the cows. And then I always realize, yeah, in a couple of months or weeks or maybe even days, they will go to the slaughterhouse. But then I can look at them and I can say, it's not because of me. Yeah, my conscience is clear with that respect.
Yeah.
It's not because of me.
That's really good. It's a really good way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yes, I like that. Okay, so what's your favorite vegan product at the moment?
Oh, yeah, there are so many, yeah.
This might be an eye opener for us because you may have access to different products that we don't have
Yeah, probably,
here in the UK.
Yeah, and especially since Brexit, it's been more difficult for us also on the continent to get British products over here because the import
really?
taxes and everything. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but I have I'm a really fan of the vegan cheeses, the Camemberti, and that's by a Dutch brand, Rosie and Riffy, they are called, and that's
I'm gonna have to look that up.
That's my favorite one. Yeah, and it's really like a camembert. You know, camembert, the French cheeses. Yeah, and it's really good. Yeah, one of my preferred dishes to eat, but that's not really a product, is like spring rolls, or do you call them summer rolls, with rice paper and just raw vegetables, and then with peanut sauce. Yeah, that's one of my favorite dishes.
Oh,
It's very simple, but
I'm starving.
That's really simple, you know, because it's just raw vegetables, but because of the rice paper and also with some rice noodles in it, yeah, it makes it really good and very nutritious and balanced and healthy. And you can make them as you want. If you want to make some with celery or with carrots, and you can even put tofu in them and whatever. Yeah, brilliant. I love those. Yeah. Because vegan cheeses have been, that's also been a development, you know. Vegan cheeses in the beginning were like, we're not going to convince anybody with these, you know. And nowadays you have the cheeses that are really fermented and much better than in the beginning days.
Definitely go along with that. Some of the cheese that we've tried has been absolutely foul, but yeah, recently you can get these, I think the sort of basic cheddar style cheese was achieved a couple of years ago, probably. That's fairly acceptable, but things like Camembert and Brie and things like that, we've tried a few that have been really foul, really horrible.
Well, Rosie and Riffy is definitely it's not like I have any part of the business, you know, but yeah, I just like them.
That's okay.
If they manage to send us anything, we'll get some over to you.
Yeah, definitely.
So, if someone came to you asking for advice on going vegan, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, there's so many things to say, you know. First of all, think about the reason why you're going vegan. Veganism is about justice against the use of animals, the exploitation of animals. I think when you really keep that in mind, it should make it more easy to do the practical side of veganism, you know, when you keep that in mind. Yeah, everybody sometimes has difficult moments when it's difficult or social situations, but when you keep that in mind, that should make it easier. But then, yeah, And also that veganism, you know, the definition also says as far as possible and practicable, you know, so yeah, in certain situations, maybe it won't be possible to avoid using animal products, but if there are alternatives, use the alternatives. And as far as possible and practicable is very important, because there are situations, perhaps people with disabilities or people who don't have financial access to certain things, or like people living in food deserts and you know, areas where they cannot access fresh food and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, as far as possible and practicable is really important to remember when you feel you are struggling. The availability of alternatives, that there have to be alternatives to be able to live vegan, to fully without the use of animal products, of course. So keep that in mind. Don't beat yourself up about it if you make a mistake or if it's not really possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, on the practical side, then if you go on a holiday or if you go to a restaurant, always be prepared, I would say. Even to this day, when we go on holiday, we always carry some vegan energy bars that we are prepared for situations that we don't find any restaurants or shops or something like that. Maybe when you're in a total rural area where there's hardly any shops, so that you always have some vegan energy bars, and you can easily survive for a day on energy bars, you know. And for restaurants, when you go on restaurants, don't expect the waiters and the staff. If you say, oh, I would like to have a vegan dish, if it's in a non-vegan restaurant, of course, and sometimes, you end up in a non-vegan restaurant because you're with other people who are perhaps non-vegan. Don't expect the waiters or the staff to know exactly what vegan means. I would say my advice would be always spell out vegan means no animal products. And that means no meat, no fish, no dairy, blah, blah, blah. And also give some alternatives. It means I can eat fruit and veggies and nuts and seeds and sauces with soy milk. So to give them an idea, because in the beginning, we've had situations like, we just said, oh, we're vegan, can you give us something vegan, please? Thinking that, they work in a restaurant, they must know what vegan means. And then, that didn't always end well, you know? So it's still important to spell it out, to say what vegan really entails. That would be a practical tip.
I really like that, because I've said it in restaurants before, and people have said, oh, but this is gluten-free.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's
which is obviously not the same thing, but they hear free and they think, oh yeah, that must be the same. But I like giving them examples of things that you can eat. That's a good way of turning it around.
That's something that I always do. So I told you in the beginning that I email a lot of restaurants, not only in Bruges, but in the wider area as well. When I see an opening on the menu that I think, oh, maybe, they would be open to serving something vegan, I send them an email and I ask, look, we are vegan. We would like to visit your restaurant. Would you be willing to make a menu for us if we make a reservation, if we tell you in advance? And vegan means we don't eat any animal products. Like I said, not this, not this, not that. But I always add what we do eat is this and this and this and this. And sometimes I will even add like a link to my blog or a recipe site or something, that they have an idea what veganism really entails, what it means.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Because it might even sow a seed with them, mightn't it? Might even get them thinking about it a bit more. We've got someone coming who's vegan. Oh my God, it's going to be a big panic. But it might actually make them realise, actually, we could try and do this. That's really good.
But sometimes I get a negative response for, no, our kitchen doesn't do that, and no, we don't have the staff for that. So that's a pity. But then then I know I rather they say no, than that they say yes, oh yes, come, and we get just served, you know, like some lettuce and some tomatoes. If they say no, yeah, it's a sign that they are not ready for it and that they're not open for it. So I then consider it their loss, yeah, and a loss for the animals, of course, as well. But they must realize eventually that they cannot. They will have to develop, because also when you, for example, when you're with colleagues from work, and say you're with 6 people from work or family, the vegans are usually the ones who will decide the restaurants, because they will say, yeah, we want to go to a restaurant where they have vegan options. So yeah, restaurant owners have to realize that well, they have to develop, not only for the practical side, but also, of course, for environmental reasons and for animal rights reasons.
Yeah,
that's it. That's a great point. The future is ours.
Yep.
Then they've got to catch up.
Yeah, we hope.
Definitely. Okay. So who's your vegan inspiration?
Well, it may be strange to say, but I don't really consider myself a foodie. That although my Instagram and my blog is mainly focused on food, the Bruges vegan, but yeah, I was always more like an animal rights activist, and yeah, I get so many inspiration for food from Instagram and so many blogs, and it would not be fair just to take out one. I would say that my inspiration has always been more like on the theoretical side, the animal rights things, and there are 2 people that I would like to mention, and I already mentioned her in the beginning, and that's Carol Adams. And her most well-known book is The Sexual Politics of Meat, where she explores the intersections between sexism and speciesism, and how eating meat is seen as masculine, and how veganism, vegetarianism is seen as something feminine, as something less worthy in a patriarchal society. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend reading up her work, The Sexual Politics of Meat. And then there's another author, and that's David Niebert. He's a sociologist, and he has written a lot on the interconnections between animal rights and human rights. So that's also been a big inspiration for me, because I'm not only an animal rights activist, but I really believe in total liberation. I think that all discriminations like speciesism, sexism, racism, ableism as well, they are all interconnected with one another in a total system of oppression. And you can't just single out one of them, like speciesism, and say, oh, we're just going to focus on the animals. No, I think it's all connected with each other. And in that book by David Niebert, it's really explained very well how it's interconnected with one another, and that you cannot see it separately. So those are my inspirations, and yeah, definitely recommend it.
that sounds really good. Might have a look at them myself.
Yeah, David Niebert is a really good book.
Yeah.
Is that the End of Meat? Just looked it up there. Is that his name?
No, it's called Animal Rights and Human Rights.
Being the Happy Cow ambassador that you are, what's your favourite vegan venue or restaurant?
Oh, that's another difficult question there, you know.
You can have more than one if it's a struggle.
Yeah.
That's really difficult to choose, you know, to single one out. But there's one shop that I would really like to mention in Bruges, and it's a vegan shop. And it's not just like a shop where you buy where you buy clothes or anything, or where you can, but it's a vegan traiteur. Do you know the word traiteur? No, that's a Dutch French word. It's like a butcher shop, but a vegan butcher shop, you know.
What?
But yeah, in a butcher shop they sell prepared food as well, you know. They sell things like oven dishes, and butcher shops in the UK they do, or they do in Belgium. So this is like a vegan shop that sells freshly homemade prepared food. You understand? Like bread spreads and lasagna and stews, and that you can buy just to take home and to put in the oven, or to and they also sell vegan cheeses and vegan cakes and vegan pie. So you have everything in one shop vegan. So the name of the place is Forest Food. So that's a shop that I think every town, every street should have a shop like that instead of a butcher shop, you know. And that's the shop of the future. Yeah.
Sounds
And about restaurants, and I can't really give a favorite restaurant. That would be unfair to so many other restaurants. But when we go to the Netherlands, we always go to an Indonesian restaurant, and we really like Indonesian food. So, and you can there hardly yet. I don't think there's a completely vegan Indonesian restaurant in the Netherlands, not that I'm aware of. But you can always go in an Indonesian restaurant and ask for a rice table. You know, that's all different sorts of dishes and small portions. And they veganize it because they really have a tradition of vegetarian food and of vegan food. They always have tofu and tempeh and all sorts. So that's never a problem to have a vegan rice table.
that sounds really good.
Yeah, and with peanut sauce and everything, it's really good.
Fantastic.
Yeah. That's great. So in the intro, I mentioned that you've edited books. Trudi, tell us about those.
Oh yeah, the first book was called Mensen en andere dieren. That translates as Humans and Other Animals. And it's more than 20 years ago, you know, and it was more, that was in the time when I was working at university and was doing my research. And it was more bringing together people at that time who were in one way or another connected with the animal rights movement or studying human-animal relations on an academic level. So it was a combination of activists and academics who were writing about human-animal issues. So it's from a long time ago. I wasn't even vegan at that time, and it's not really a vegan book, but yeah, I'm still proud of it because it was the beginning of critical animal studies, which has now become a field itself in academia, but at that time wasn't really. Yeah, I struggled really hard at university to get my doctoral research because it was like animals and criminology. Who wants to hear about that, you know? Because and that's why I'm proud of the book, that it's a sign of the times. It's a historical document. And the second book is just from 2 years ago. It's also in Dutch. So it's called Een ander soort zuster, and that translates as a different kind of sister, another species of sister. So it's a double meaning in the title, and it's all with women animal rights activists, vegan activists. And I wanted to do that from Flanders and from the Netherlands. I wanted to do that specifically because, you know, there are so many women involved in the vegan movement and in the animal rights movement, and actually the majority of the vegan movement are women, and also the majority of vegans are women. But what you then often see is that the spokespersons or the so-called heroes or the better known activists are then often men taking those. So there's also
white men like us, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
that's how it is. Yeah, it's not right, but that's how it is.
Yeah, but you're giving a woman a platform now, so that's also
we're trying our best.
Very good. So I wanted to give all women from activists from the Netherlands and from Belgium a platform to tell about their activism, why are they vegan, and give their organizations in the book a platform to speak about their activism. Yeah. So that was the second book. It was inspired by a book from Lisa Kammerer. I don't know if you know her. She has talked at the International Animal Rights Conference every year. That's in Luxembourg every year in September. She's an American activist, a feminist as well, vegan feminist. And she had a book out, it's more than 10 years ago, Sister Species. So with the same scope, you know, female women activists contributing a chapter. So that inspired me to do that for the Netherlands and Belgium. And I co-edited that book with Kiki Bayens from the Netherlands.
That's awesome. So you've also got another platform as well. Tell us about that.
It's called Crip Humanimal. And crip is like a slur word for cripple. but it's a word, sorry, that the disabled community has claimed again. You know, it's not not with a negative aspect anymore, but we reclaimed it and being proud of being Crip, you know. And it's I created that platform because, like I said, there is a lot of literature and explorations about the interconnections between speciesism and sexism and ecofeminism, like I mentioned, Carol Adams and lots of others. And there's also a lot of explorations and books and activists exploring the interconnections between speciesism and racism. But there's not so much that was specifically focused on the interconnections between speciesism and ableism. You know, ableism, do you know the term? That's discrimination of people based on abilities, on having certain abilities or lacking certain abilities. So discrimination of of people with disabilities, of disabled persons. So on that platform, it's just an exploration of myself. I was also influenced by the book Beasts of Burden by Sonora Taylor, where she's a disabled vegan activist, where she explores the interconnections between animal rights and disability rights. You know, one thing that I could, for example, mention is like, do you know there used to be there used to be circuses where animals had to perform, and there are still circuses where animals have to perform. In some countries, they are forbidden, they are outlawed. But do you know that in the 19th century and well into the 20th century, there were also people with disabilities that had to perform and that were put on display because they had a very big head, or, you know, that disabled people were put on display. So that are all interconnections, like how the oppression of animals, of other animals, is also in some ways has similarities with the oppression of disabled people. It's not the same, but the way they operate, if you think about language use and everything, we can see a lot of similarities. So I'm exploring those similarities and how it's all connected in a system of oppression. And also on that platform, I want to give a voice to disabled vegans, because there's also, unfortunately, sometimes some ableism in the vegan movement. There's also sometimes some health shaming in the vegan movement, you know, like, oh yeah, all the veganism is a cure for everything, and if you go vegan, certainly you will be cured. And you know, that's not true. Okay, eating healthy and being vegan will make the risk to have certain cancers much lower, but you can still get cancer. Even vegans can get cancer, and even vegans can get autoimmune diseases, but your chances will be much lesser. So there is ableism in the vegan movement, and that's also one of the things that I want to address on the platform Crip Humanimal.
So I think we must be just about at the end.
Yeah, we've talked a lot. I've talked a lot, mainly. Yeah,
it's been really great. I'm really glad that you came on. Thank you so much.
It's been an education.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I hope it reaches a lot of people and it can inspire some people. And good luck with all the other guests and your podcasts. It seems very interesting.
Thank you so much. Okay. It's been so great having you on. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
So, how did you like that, Wes?
That was good. That was an education beyond words.
Very much so. I think Trudi is our first academic vegan that we've had on.
Yes.
As is someone who's properly studied all of the, especially the animal rights aspect. And I've definitely got some further reading to do. I didn't ever think I'd get homework from a podcast, but here we are.
I don't think you've been set homework, but I know what you mean.
No, I don't. No, but I feel like she sort of piqued my interest there, and I want to find out more about it. I'll download a couple of books and I'll read them on holiday, perhaps.
Yeah, you do that and then tell me all about them.
Yeah, I'll come back on the podcast and do a book review, vegan book review podcast.
No, it's good. That was really good. It was good fun.
Yes, absolutely. And our first international guest as well. So we've got some, well, that's hopefully opened up a new element of the podcast for us, and we'll get some more on.
You never know. So
Sadly, we only speak. Sorry.
not only have we got listeners around the world, we've now got guests around.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Giving people a platform. That's what we're all about.
Absolutely. I must stop saying absolutely. I say it all the time. It's really annoying.
Absolutely.
It's a good job this is an audio podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Commentary. The commentary says, Wes shows Matthew the middle finger. Thank you for listening to that. I really hope you enjoyed it and found something useful. So if you want to get involved, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter.
And if you wanted to get in touch, all you've got to do is email us at howiveganpodcast@gmail.com.